I guess I was expecting more of the last 3 seasons when I was part of the team, but it was a lot of all the stuff before
So you
it.
thought it was all going to be about you. Is that
That's it. That's it. I was waiting for my interview. All right, welcome back to the latest episode of Game Day Glare. I'm Lance. I'm with E. This is the podcast for sports videographers. How you doing, E?
I'm doing good, not much happening, as I was telling you off air. Same old in my end. Not a lot of filming, just doing my videos. But yeah, doing good overall. How about you?
Well, I was telling you off air, but I'll bring it on air now. I actually put timecode on my GoPros the other day, and I don't know if any of our listeners have ever done that before, but it was very, very helpful. You have to download this firmware on your SD card. You put it in your GoPro. It updates your GoPro. Sorry, this is if you have 12 or lower. If you have 13, it's already on there. If you have 12 or lower, and then there's this nice little website that GoPro gives you, and it creates its own time code, and it's just like this QR code that creates your time code, and it was so easy to sync later in post. I started doing a multicam at first when I put it in my Premiere, and I was like, wait, I don't need to do this. I just went to synchronize like I would do with normal audio from multiple cams. I just selected time code, and it was instant, and wow, it saved me a lot of time. And honestly, to have time code on an action cam, I found so helpful because I usually just let those roll anyway the whole time. So yeah, it was a good little trick. So I used that last weekend for hockey, and yeah, it was a game changer. I never did that before. I never even thought about putting time code on GoPros. Now I'm looking for a solution where I can have time code on the GoPros, time code on my Sony cameras that just really syncs up games a lot easier too. I mean, obviously it depends on what you're doing. If you're just doing highlights and that, you don't really need it, but I was actually doing something for a team, so they wanted specific timing of the clock and that, so it really, really helped me put that package together for them.
Yeah, no, it's great, especially if because it's hard to sync when if the cameras are shooting different things. Like if they're pointed at the same thing, and you can kind of time, okay, there's that person is right there, so let me find that same shot in the other camera. But when they're pointing at, if you've got a camera pointed at each goal, for example, hard to sync. So yeah, must be very, very helpful for a situation like that.
I was really happy with it, and the fact that it didn't take no time at all. It was faster than syncing audio because the time code's already burnt in. So yeah, it was a game changer. So to today's show. Today's show is more like a little trip down memory lane, because I've been feeling a little bit nostalgic. I was telling he kind of was laughing at me. 2 big events happened this week, at least in my life in sports. Okay? At least for me, they're big topics. When I would talk to E about it, he's like, "Yeah, it was a big deal." First thing. No,
one more than the other, but yeah,
exactly. So the first thing is Canada has a team in the World Series. Now, this hasn't happened since 1993, the Toronto Blue Jays. And there's this viral picture going around of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. when he was a kid at the Expos with his dad raising his hand with a helmet. Now, not to date myself, but I was there. I was working for the Expos when little Vladdy used to run around, and he was just this chubby kid. Actually, Vladimir Guerrero Sr. used to have his whole family there. His brother was playing baseball too. The mom would come cook for everybody. His son would be running around, his other kids too. So I got to witness that. And then it just so happens the day after the Blue Jays make the World Series, Netflix finally releases the new movie, Who Killed the Montreal Expos? So, of course, I watched it to see if I had any cameos, because I do remember when the Expos left, Sportsnet, which was just Rogers at the time, put a clip up of last game, and you see me crying in the background. Okay. So I was like, did I make the movie? I did not make the movie. At least I did not notice myself in the movie. But I thought maybe today we could talk about the Expos, talk about Vladdy, talk about our beginnings, how we started, how this industry's kind of in 20 years changed, and how, especially in baseball, how there's so much content now, and especially how much more content they're going to produce with the World Series, because whenever there's a finals, they always produce more and more content. So I thought maybe we can kind of talk a little bit about all that kind of stuff. I know you didn't work for the Expos, but you did, you grew up in Montreal. You wear an Expos hat way more than I ever do on this show. So people know that you do like the Expos. So I figured, yeah, maybe we could do a little trip down memory lane, talk about some new stuff, kind of like a lighter episode where it's not just teaching us all how to be great videographers every episode,
What's the problem with that?
Nothing. I think it's great.
It's only what I do for a living, but whatever.
That's it. I'm trying to give you the day off and just kind of relax and tell people, because we both had that day one in sports. So I thought maybe we could kind of tell that story again, and maybe get some new listeners who haven't heard that story, and kind of show them how we grown our career through this. And for me, honestly, if I didn't work at the Montreal Expos, I probably wouldn't have been in sports videography like I am now, because I used to just be a fan. I used to just go to games, and never did I think that I would be working in pro sports 23 years later, But anyway, that's today's topic.
What was day one? How did it start?
So day one with the Montreal Expos, actually all started, I was in Concordia, and had a friend who was just finishing Concordia, and he was working for the Montreal Expos. And he was working in the actual TV studio part of it, because we were filming actually for the Jumbotron at the time. Anyway, he called me and said, "Listen, we're doing interviews for cameramen. Do you think you'd be interested in being a part-time cameraman for the Expos? We need some people for the summer in case someone calls in sick and all that. And since you're doing communications at Concordia," so I was already doing TV programs and editing and all that, he thought it'd be a great gateway for me. So I said, "Yeah, for sure." So I go to the Olympic Stadium, and it's a dream to work for a sports team, especially when you're younger. Like, I used to go to games, and we used to try and chase down fall balls, and I actually got a fall ball one time when I was a spectator. So I thought this was great. Anyway, I go for this interview, and I didn't really know that much about broadcast at the time. Like, yes, I was editing stuff and doing stuff in a controlled environment, but I didn't know how like live TV, live sporting events would be, how these big lenses work on the cameras. Like, we had little it was like what would I say, like beta cam almost back then, we would use in the studios net. So I never worked on a big hard body with an 85 zoom lens net. So they asked me some questions about that, and I didn't really know much about it, So I kind of worked my way through and explained other things I knew. Like, I knew the game of baseball. I knew what they were looking for. I knew the angles they were looking for. And they said, like, "Okay, we'll get back to you." And then they called me on the way home, and I had just gotten a cell phone back too at this time, because it was fairly new. And they said, "Listen, actually, we have a guy who's not coming back. Would you be interested in being a full-time cameraman for the Expos?" So it was me and this one other guy, my friend Peter Pons, who we mentioned on the show before. We were both the two new cameramen for the Expos, and it was great, man. Like, we were switch positions all the time. I was in the outfield a lot, or a high home, and those were our positions for our first year with the Expos. And man, I learned so much that year. I learned so much. What about you? What was your first day in sports, or how did you get your first gig in sports?
It was with the Montreal Canadiens, and the way it started was, actually, I was telling you, I'm filming for Jesse later this week, and Jesse was a friend of mine. We went to well, I was gonna say college, Cégep is called here, but yeah, kind of I don't know how to translate for like American people, but it's not quite university, it's not quite high school, it's somewhere in between. Anyway, I was
It's like
going there
junior
to
college, kind of.
study, kind
CJIP,
of. Yeah,
grade
yeah,
11, grade 12, grade 13, or whatever it'd be. Yeah.
yeah, because we basically do one less year of high school, and have this thing in between. Anyway, all that to say that I was going to school with this friend. We were studying together in TV, and after that, we kept in touch, doing different jobs here and there for in different ways. And he ended up working for the Canadians. And actually, someone told me about that job. I was like, oh man, I need to try to speak to someone that could potentially give me an interview. And then Jesse calls me, is like, you're not going to guess what job I just got. And I was like, oh, fuck. But anyway, so he was working there, but he has his own record label, his band. He's big into music. And he was going away for an entire summer, maybe even like more longer than that, for like a tour with his band. And he needed someone because it was still like a freelance base at the time, but you were there, a lot of hours, like, but you weren't like an employee per se. So he was just looking for someone to replace him while he was gone. And he asked me, and I said yes. And that's how I got in. And I never, until I resigned 6 years later, they basically hired me full time not too long after that. And he just started focusing, like, we're still friends, not like I went behind his back or anything like that. It wasn't, that was very clear from day one when they offered me the role. I was like, you guys are putting me in a very awkward position. We need to talk with Jesse. But anyway, all that to say that, I started there, I think it was summer of 2006. Yeah, my first season, I think, was 2006, 2007. So it was good because the way, like, the summer I was, because I think back then I was doing mostly like concerts, actually, like doing a lot of ads for like upcoming concerts at the Bell Center, and a little bit of hockey. And as the hockey season was, because it was during the summer, and then as the hockey season came along, I was doing a bit more hockey, but still a lot of concert stuff. And gradually through the years, I kind of made the switch where I was doing mostly hockey and just barely any concerts at the end. But yeah, it was a great experience that taught me a lot about sports. And like you, is like, because I was working in television before that, and even through that, um, for the first few years. And like, working in television was always my goal, and I achieved it, and it was fun. But it was kind of like I was working on TV shows that weren't really shows that I would personally be watching. Like, it wasn't topics that I was excited about. So when I started producing content about concerts and NHL and all that stuff, and even like through these, because we're at the Bell Center, I was also doing boxing and all these other things. I was like, man, this is so much fun, and it's easier. It's more motivating as well, because it's like I'm the demographic, like, putting something together that promotes the Montreal Canadiens. Like, I'm the person that would watch this, that would consume that type of content and all that. So I know what works, what doesn't. I'm excited when I make like a good video that I would watch, that my friends would watch. So it's a lot more motivating, it's a lot more fun, a lot more exciting. So yeah, after that, when I left to go to Australia, I was trying to see if there was a way to keep working in sports, and I was lucky then that I did, because I haven't left sports since then. Like, obviously in different ways, shape and forms, but yeah, I stayed in the sport industry since 2006. Yeah, I'm old.
you, you know what? Like, even like hearing your story, and that, it reminds me of like when you start off, and for guys who are just starting off in that, um, the one thing, piece of advice I will give you, and I still try to this day to do it, is to be present and enjoy the moment. Because we get so busy, and you're running around, you're filming stuff, and you're rushing to do edits and stuff nowadays, and that is, try and take that one moment and enjoy the atmosphere, enjoy where you are. Because when I first started in the industry, that's exactly what I did every game. Like, my first year at the Expos, I enjoyed all 82 home games. And I remember like going, and we'd play pitch and catch on the field, or we'd get there early and we just kind of look around and watch batting practice, because we were filming for the Jumbotron. So we didn't have to film all these highlights and all these guys at every moment. We got to really enjoy that. And even now, when I film the Canadians games, I take a second or two to just kind of sit there and be like, wow, I'm lucky I'm filming this. I'm at this event, I'm getting paid to be here, because sometimes we kind of forget about all that and we just think about
Mm.
focusing on the work and focusing on all the deadlines and all the stress that's coming. But really take a moment to enjoy what you're doing, because it's not always easy. Now, headed back down memory lane, I mentioned before the Netflix movie of the death of the Montreal Expos. It was pretty interesting to see, because when I was working for a franchise and I found out I was losing my job 3 hours before the last game, it was a lot different for me than it was on this TV. They made it sound like everyone knew, and we didn't really
Well,
know. Like, we knew every year, you knew there was the possibility. You knew there was a possibility, but we
you
didn't want to
didn't know it
believe
was
it.
gonna happen this week, but it's been like years of
Yeah.
like, yeah, we need a new stadium, otherwise they're gone. All that sort of stuff.
No, exactly. But when you're on your way to work and the Washington Nationals have a press conference and announce that your team is
Mm.
coming there, and you still have to go do a job, like, man, it was so hard that day, because we had, like, it was a dream job for me. I was working at the Canadians at the same time. I was very fortunate. After my first year with the Expos in 2002, my boss Chantal went to the Canadians, and she brought me with her to film the game. So I was very fortunate. I was doing both at the time. But the Expos was like my first love. Like, baseball was so different than hockey. It was so relaxed. It was so chill. The crew was different. Everything about baseball was different. Like, my boss like stole UP's SUV, not SUV, motocross four-wheeler, and drove it around the Olympic Stadium when no one was there. Like, you can't do that at the Montreal Canadiens. You can't take the little ATV and drive on the ice because you feel like it. The Expos, you were able to do stuff like that, and we had so much fun. But it taught me so many lessons in life that first year. Like, first of all, how to be a professional, how to be around pro athletes and act cool. Because, like, I remember meeting Ken Griffey Jr. My brother asked him for an autograph, and he said, "Oh, Mr. Griffey," and he turns around and goes, "Mr. Griffey's my dad. Call me Junior." And we're like, oh, wow, like, he was like the coolest guy. And we're trying not to be starstruck, but we got to kind of act like we're supposed to be there, and we're cool. But it kind of taught me how to be around players, how to be around these superstars, because at the end of the day, honestly, they're regular people who just have a cooler job than you. Maybe they have a little bit more dollars in their bank account, but they're normal people. So you just got to treat them normal, and they respect that more. It also taught me too to be focused and to know, like, I remember the first time that red light went on and I'm in the outfield and I'm chewing gum. My boss, like, your camera's shaking a bit, because I'm on this scaffolding in the middle of center field that's little wobbly. When you realize you can't chew gum, you got to stay focused. You have to make sure your focus is on point too, because sometimes they yell at me, "Hey, focus, focus," and I'm thinking they're telling me, "No, stay focused." They're like, "No, your actual focus is off. Like, you're soft a bit." So it teaches you all these things about the pressure of being in the moment and being on live TV. And I wouldn't be the person I am today without going through uh, that time there, because I did make mistakes and I did learn on the fly, and I met some awesome people that helped me along the way. And that's what this journey is all about. Sports videography is make the connections, learn from your mistakes, enjoy the moments. If you meet like some superstars and that, treat them like normal people, and they will respect you a lot more. And at least that's what it helped for me. What about you? Your first experiences and interactions in pro sports with athletes or miking guys up and all that. How did that kind of shape you, E?
Shape me is probably a strong way to put it, but
You're like, I don't care, man.
no, I don't think it changed me as a person. But yeah, to be honest, I've never been the type of guy that's like a super fan. It's got like, I appreciate, don't get me wrong, like I said earlier, like I'm much happier working in sports than I am working on some TV show about whatever. But I'm not a super fan. I'm not someone who's going to ask for autographs or selfies or things like that. So like when I'm around athletes, um to me it's more about, it's exciting because it makes my content more valuable to me. I'm like, oh, this is going to be an awesome shot with that player, with this situation, with this whatever. Like, I'm excited about the shot. I'm excited about the video. I'm excited about the opportunity to be part of this and to be the person who's going to put it together, like these types of things. But like being next to XYZ doesn't really get me that excited, to be honest. It's not, I'm not someone who's like, obviously the first time you're on the ice at the Bell Center, or you work with a certain level of top tier athlete, you're like, all right, I better not fuck this up and all that stuff. But it's more, to me, it's more about the opportunity to be part of something great, of something unique, something special, more than meeting someone and being able to brag about it to my friends or take a selfie for Instagram or something like that. Like, I'm really not that person. So yeah, to me it was more about like being excited about the opportunity to be part of something. Like that was the main thing for me.
I mean, when you're obviously your views change too, right? From when you're 20 to now when we're in our early 40s.
Hmm.
Um, you change, right? Like I'm not like when I see the players and I do stuff with players anymore, it's no big deal. But when I was younger, I was like, oh wow, this is cool. But you kind of just, I would tone it down a bit and just do my job and go home and make sure you did a proper job, because there is more pressure. You don't want to mess up. Like,
Hmm.
it's one thing if you and I are doing interviews or doing something and I mess up and I'm like, oh, we got to redo it. But it is harder when you're expected to be professional and get the shot right away and get the interview right away with one take or two takes, whatever, without messing it up. The thing is, though, too, if you do mess up with these guys, tell them. Just say, hey, we need to redo that shot, or hey, we need to do this, because it's better to be embarrassed in that moment than to get it in post and be like, yo, there's nothing we could do with this footage. The audio wasn't working or this wasn't happening. So flag
Yeah.
those moments there. And that's something that I had to do with athletes and redo stuff. And it's hard because especially in pro sports, we have time limits sometimes with guys to do stuff, or the guy's only available for a certain amount of time. So everyone's always trying to rush it and assuming everything's good, but make sure you double check, triple check, and make sure that you got exactly what you needed from who you need it when you needed it, because there's nothing worse than putting that card in your computer and realizing that something wasn't right in your shoot.
But I think, like, for me, I kind of had it in reverse, where because I started in television, and especially back then, TV, like everything had to be perfect, like from a technical perspective. Like, for example, before I got to be an editor, like I was working in quality control. Like, my job was to watch literally tapes and tapes of shows, and just like I would find like a drop frame that would be like 1% of the screen, just like this tiny dot in the corner, and we'd have to return, go back to edit, get rid of it, or redo the copy because it was like a mistake on the tape where when the transfer happened. Like, just like the little technical stuff, like I would have to watch the show through a vector scope, like in fast forward, but like, and look, if the whites were too low or too high, we had to redo it. And same thing with the black level and the so coming from that, and then going to like filming hockey where no one gives a shit about any of that technical stuff. We just want a nice shot that looks fun and that's entertaining and that's fun. Like, to me, that was just, not that it's easy, but it's way easier. Like, I don't have to worry about all these technical, all this red tape that people were putting on everything I was doing in television. Like, all of a sudden didn't exist, and it was just about producing content. So, and on top of it, it was fun, it was hockey, it was laid back, and most of the people that I work with have no clue how, like, when I mean, not you, but like the players and all that stuff. Like, it's not like I'm dealing with like directors and producers and actors. Like, it's just normal people. So it was so much easier. There was, in for me, like, there was just so much less pressure, because it was just like I was just producing content for the sake of producing content. All the technical stuff went away, because obviously I was keeping it to a certain standard, but like the basic standard was just so easy to me, because I was used to doing all this highly like sophisticated technical stuff for everything. So yeah, so from that perspective, like sports was it was less pressure in a way. And even like to go back to like the thing with working with athletes, like to me, I think like again, I think I'm a bit different than you in that way, where you see it as athletes and like you have to remind yourself that they're normal people, and that like for me it's the opposite. I'm like for me, I'm next to like a guy who makes $10 million, and like the first thing I see is just a normal dude, and I'm like, there's no difference between him and I. The only difference is that I'm good at filming, he's good at hockey. But so I don't get like lucky for him, and I wish we could trade places. Like, don't get me wrong, but like I don't. It's I have to remind myself that he's special. You know what I mean? Like it's I do it the other way around, where I see people, and then I remember seeing a thing with like Barack Obama who was saying like, you know, it doesn't matter what layer of like social you know, what level you're at. Like you go to the G7 meeting and it's like 30% of like super smart people, 30% of average, 30% of dumb, like bottom dumb shit people. It's just like in any, you know, whether it's hockey, politics, plumbers, cameramen, whatever, it's the same everywhere. Like, so to me, it's like, doesn't matter. Like, it's just you, whether I'm working with athletes or whoever, it's the same. There's some dumb ones, there's some really smart ones, there's some very good ones, there's some bad ones, there's and yeah, it's so that made it easy for me to be cool, calm, and collected, and do my job, I
Well,
guess.
E, I think you're special. Okay, I remind myself every day that you're special. Okay.
I think I'm
Actually,
special.
you know what though? It's crazy how like you just talked about the quality control, and even like when I used to edit TV commercials, I'm editing one now, and I just check all my blacks on my whites, and that. And when you go to broadcast, there's all these norms, and when you go to social media now, there is no standard. You know, and I have to remind clients sometimes. They're like, "Oh, this feels low, and the audio's low here, or this looks weird here," and I have to ask them, "Well, what are you watching it on?" And they're like, "Why?" I'm like, "Well, just watch it on your phone because that's where this people are going to watch this." And check how the settings are on your phone, and then you're pretty good, because there is no standard. And we used to have a standard, like you couldn't release a video if your blacks weren't proper or your whites weren't proper or your audio wasn't at minus 10 dB on SD, sorry, on beta, or minus 18 on HD. You had to, these were the standards, and that was it. Now, I did something when I was younger that I used to get made fun of all the time at the expos, especially. So every time there was a good play, I would ask the guys, because they would have to do replays, and back then it was tape to tape. Okay. So I'd always ask them every time I caught a good highlight, can you put it on my tape? And at the end of the season, I had a tape with all my highlights. And nobody did this back then, because it wasn't like, well, what are you going to do? Self promote yourself? Now you need to self promote yourself. Now we need to show, like, hey, if you're doing a video from an event, you need someone to take a photo or a video of you showing you holding your camera at that event, so people realize that, oh, I was actually there. I actually filmed this. Back then, there was no social proof. So I have a beta tape still today that I never used that has all my highlights from 2002, 2003, 2004 with the Montreal Expos. I will dig it up one day, I guess. But I used to do that because I realized at a young age, like, hey, I might need this footage later on, and it's not going to last forever. So it did kind of teach me to kind of start banking my footage, start banking some of my stuff. Now, it didn't teach me what to do with it after, but I do have a tape with all my stuff. But like you, E, running your YouTube and that, you mentioned many times on the show that you will go back and grab some clips from past videos and that, if you're talking about a certain subject and that. And that's something that every time, you know, a young creator is out there, yes, back up your stuff. Keep your best shots, because you might need them later on. And I did have one or two actually transferred. You know, I shared the home run ball that hit me. I do have like some Vladimir Guerrero highlights and that I do have access to, that's on my hard drives if I ever need. But I never digitized the full tape. But like guys used to make fun of me all the time, and it was like an ongoing joke that every time there was a highlight, they'd be like, "Put it on Lance's tape, put it on Lance's tape, ha ha ha." And I'm like, at the end, when the Expos left and I had that tape, you know how happy I was that I did that? Yes, it was probably the first time I asked for someone to save it for me and put it on my tape. It was probably a little embarrassing. Or there were times where I'd have to go in before a game and actually manually take the highlight and put it tape to tape to add to my tape. But I was already kind of thinking ahead because yes, I was shocked the day that they left. But every year when we left, we didn't know if we were coming back. Now, fast forward to like 2017, when we brought the Blue Jays to Montreal, I got to go back and it was really strange because it was like a time capsule. Like, imagine leaving your desk and coming back like 15 years later and everything is still there. That's what it was like. Like, tapes that we had on the shelves were still there. There was just a lot of dust on them and that. And it was like a strange feeling. It was very nostalgic. It was very cool, but it was eerie at the same time because it's like time just stood still. I grew up, things happened outside of life, but inside that building, nothing changed. And it was very, very bizarre.
So how was that? Were you working camera as well?
Yeah, I did camera. Actually, I was doing different roles. So at the time with Evenco, I actually, one game I was doing camera, because they came 3 times, the Blue Jays. One time I did camera in that just for fun. Another time I was helping more on the production side and all that because I had already done all the TV spots and I was working with the Blue Jays to do video material and that. So I was just kind of making sure they were playing all the right videos and doing all the right stuff. So that was kind of different. I was more in the production part. And then another time, I kind of overseed stuff and then I just watched the game. So I was there with my son and I was trying to, I brought my son on the field and I tried to get him to live all the things that I got to live when I was working with the Expos. And the coolest thing was Vladdy Guerrero Jr. hit a home run to win the game, a walk-off home run in Montreal. And I was watching the game with my son, not working the game. And that was one of the coolest experiences too, because I had explained to my son how his dad worked for the Expos. And his dad is the only guy that I actually ever asked for an autograph. And I waited, of course, till the last game of the season. We all knew that Vladdy was leaving the Expos. And I asked him to sign a baseball for me, and he gave me shit. He said, "You've been in my dugout all season. Why are you asking me on the last day to sign this for you?" And I said, I don't know. And he was kind of like broken English and Spanish, but I understood what he was saying. And anyway, he just signed the ball. He handed it to me, but he's like, "I shouldn't have waited. I should have asked right away. Like, don't wait till the last day, But anyway, I have so many good memories from the Expos. It's really cool. And it really catapulted my career. It really helped me, like I said, become who I am.
And how did you enjoy the documentary?
It was different. I thought, I guess I was expecting more of the last 3 seasons when I was part of the team, but it was a lot of all the stuff before
So you
it.
thought it was all going to be about you.
That's it. I was waiting for my interview. I did reach out to Netflix. I said, "Listen, if you need someone, I'm available to talk. I could tell you what it was really like." I just thought that they would focus more on the last 3 years because I thought Major League Baseball owning the Expos was really what happened, like took them down. But it seemed like it was all the stuff leading up to that. Like that was just the last Band-Aid, There were so many other layers to it. And it was kind of neat to see all those layers. I liked it, but it was a lot of stuff that I already knew, especially because I worked for the team. So you kind of already knew what was going on. And it's always nice to see like the players reminisce and how they saw Montreal. Because if you don't live in Montreal, you don't know where the Big O is related to downtown. And it's not close, right?
It's next to my house.
Montreal is a baseball town. And I do think that baseball, if they would have got that stadium, I really do believe that baseball would have worked here. And it would have created more videographer opportunities and stuff because Montreal, we're coming along now with sport teams. Like, we have the Canadians, you have the Alouettes, but now you have like the soccer. And now you have all these women's sports too. You have the PWHL, the women's soccer and that. So we are getting more and more sports teams, the basketball teams that you've been going to, the Alliance and all that. Things are happening. Montreal is showing that they are a sports town, but I always believe that baseball could work, but you need that stadium downtown.
Yeah, but I think it's a tricky one because like the Alouettes also started at the Olympic Stadium and they couldn't survive there because it's too big, it's too expensive to rent and to manage. And the reason why they survive is because they went to McGill. It's much smaller, it's much cheaper, all that sort of stuff. So for baseball, it's kind of the same thing, but it's trickier because it's MLB, it's not the CFL. So you need, like, the CFL will play ball. Like, I don't think every stadium is the same size. I think even the field is different size. Like in Montreal, like the end zones, they go like they're not even straight. They kind of curve in at the end, and they allow it. They let it slide. Like, that wouldn't fly in the NFL. So MLB is kind of the same thing. There's like strict standards for your stadiums that you just can't go below, like a certain seating and certain quality and certain size and this and that. So to have that in Montreal on the cheaper side, because, like, let's face it, like, exhibition games are going to be full, but like 81 games a season, not so sure. So like you can't go all out and just ball out with the stadium like the Clippers did in the NBA. So like, but you need a roof, because what happens if it starts snowing and they're making the playoffs? So you're really gonna forego all that money because you don't have a roof. Like, it's a tricky situation, if anything, geographically, because I think Toronto's got a bigger fan base and can survive with a big stadium, but I don't think Montreal can survive with a big stadium. They need like a small boutique stadium in downtown, but then that becomes an issue, at this time of the year. So,
Well, in the documentary, they kind of, at the same time, Milwaukee Brewers and stuff, they were smaller franchises, and they kind of show them compared to them. So there was option to grow. It was just all about funding, and obviously they didn't have the funding.
yeah, well, because that's the other thing. Like you talk about the Alouettes, which is probably the second biggest team in Montreal. If the Alouettes don't make the playoffs for like 3 seasons in a row, I guarantee you it's going to have a major impact on TV ratings and ticket sales. Like, not like the Canadians are good, like, on that front, but they're the only team. All the other teams, if they start losing, we see it at soccer. Like, if they lose, they lose fans. So baseball would be the same. Baseball was the same. Like, there was this, they were getting people with $1 hot dogs and things like that, because if they don't win, no one shows up. If they win, or if they've got like a new French Canadian pitcher, like something, like, yeah, people will show up, but it's not going to be full, like, on the yearly, like every game, if they have like a losing team. So it's a tricky. People enjoy baseball, but they won't necessarily buy season tickets. You know what I mean? It's two different things.
Well, pictures, I was working for the baseball team when they didn't have a TV deal. And that's one of the things that really hurt them. They didn't have a TV deal here. So all the visiting teams, that's who would produce the broadcast. It wasn't Montreal. It was the visiting team. So like when that home run ball hit me, I was working for San Diego at the time, but we were the home camera guys, so you need broadcast rights. You need all that stuff. Anyway, since the Expos left till now, baseball has like gone like crazy with all the content and that, especially, the Jays are in the World Series. My phone, when Springer hit that home run, I cannot believe how fast the Blue Jays and MLB had that clip up right away. And I feel like baseball, their workflow is very, very fast. They have time because you have in between innings. We had Pete Gottschalk on the show. He kind of explained to us how it goes and that. But like, they're uploading cards in between bats, in between innings, in between plays. Like, it's crazy because baseball is a slower paced sport, but the highlights, there's nothing slow about the highlights. There's nothing slow about how much content they're getting out there. They are blazing with content. And I feel like with the World Series, by the time it airs, it's already, the Blue Jays will be probably one game away from winning it. It's crazy the content that they're going to put out there and how much content they're putting out there. How do you feel like it's evolved since you started in the industry? Because I feel like for me, when I used to tell people I was a videographer or I filmed and all that, they were like, oh, that's a cool hobby, and that's what it was to people. And now when you see everyone on their phones and that, you realize, no, this is a full-time job. There's only more to come. Yes, I know there's AI that can help us or whatever, but for sports, you need to be there. You need to film the sports. That's the only way these highlights and all these clips are going to get out. AI is not going to replace that.
Well,
Yeah, no.
well, I mean, AI cameras, AI editing. It's all
Maybe,
it's
but
at the moment it's not great, but it's gonna get better.
so what do you feel like is the biggest improvement or biggest like overload since you started in sports?
The biggest what? Sorry.
Like overload of content and all that.
Well, I think it's true for all sports. Like I think baseball, like all the others, it's like it needs to be instantaneous every time there's something special happening. It's on every little, especially short form content. It's on every platform, and yeah, I think like sports videography is definitely a job. Well, the great thing about it is that like yeah, if you go back to talking about how old we are and the stuff we used to do, like it used to be that you had to be part of a broadcast, or whether it's sports or anything else, like it had to be like TV related somehow. You had to be employed. Um, where now there's so many different opportunities. You can be filming for a broadcaster and editing for a broadcaster, but you can also work for a team. You can freelance. You can work for players. You can work for schools. So there's so many opportunities. So like that's why when people say like it's oversaturated, is there still ways to make a living in sports? Like, of course there is. Like it's just you might not work with you might not work for the NBA because it's one thing to say I want to work for the NBA, but then there's like one team in your area. So like, are you willing to move and things like that? So like, there's not that many opportunities at the top level. If there's maybe one or two or three professional teams kind of in the areas that you want to live, but there's a lot of schools. There's a lot of everything else. So you can definitely like that's the beauty of it to me. Like it's how the industry has evolved in a way that everybody needs video now. So and sports is a great thing to film because obviously every industry wants to use video to promote their services or their products. But for all the other ones, for most of the other ones anyway, it's kind of boring stuff. And it's like, how do we make this interesting? How do we make this into a video that people are going to enjoy? With sports, you don't really have that problem. Like it's very exciting. It's fun to watch. If people are into your sports or into your team, all you need to do is produce a good enough video and they'll watch it. It's not like if you're trying to sell shoes or, like that's a much bigger problem. So yeah, there's tons of opportunities. It blew up and to me, yeah, it's fascinating and it's fun and it's yeah, I think that there's just going to be more and more to come. But yeah, I do think that AI and smart technology, all that sort of stuff, like there's different ways, like just the way we're talking about technical limitate, like going through all the red tape of the technical side of TV, like when you work for like you're producing content for the web, as you said, you don't really have to there's no one saying like you can't upload this or you can't do it that way or blah blah blah. But at the same time, a lot of the stuff that we used to do manually is done automatically. Like if I'm pushing my exposure or my whites, um if I'm pushing them up, they're automatically clip at 100. It's gonna look overexposed, but they clip, where back in the day they would just keep going. So it was up to you to make sure that the whites and the blacks were where they needed to be. Or you could use a clipper, which was like an effect, and it was actually like hardware, like the signal would have to go through that machine, and it would clip your signal. Where now it's all like, if you're in Premiere Pro, like you'll never have blacks that are lower than 0. So yeah, a lot of that stuff is done automatically now. We don't even have to worry about it. We don't question it. Um, but it's still being done. So that's what I mean by like AI and all that stuff is just going to get better and better. Like at some point, now like when people ask for camera settings, it's like, well, it depends on your environment. Like I can't tell you which ISO to use, which this, which that. Soon enough, like the cameras are going to be good enough that you won't have to worry about this stuff. Like all you're going to be doing is pressing record and aiming at stuff. And even then, like aiming, how important is aiming? Like you can just, if 360 cameras become as good quality as my FX3, who needs a cameraman? Just put the camera on the pole, press record, and come pick it up again at the end of the game, and then it just becomes, you're just gonna have editors, no more cameraman, and just it's. But how many years or decades are we talking about? I don't know.
I was just about to say how there's so much opportunity in this industry,
Well,
and you're like,
is.
pop a 360 cam and let it go.
Well, I think the future, that's where it's going, but like how much time is it going to take for us to get there? And like I said, putting a 360 camera, that's fine, but then you need to, you still need someone in the end to decide where it's pointing and move it around and all that sort of stuff in terms of like in post-production. But yeah, I think like any industry, like we're going in a direction where there's going to be less and less, but it's already the case. Like what I am doing now used to be done by like 5 or 6 people 15, 20 years ago. So it's not new. It's always been this way, and it's just going to keep going. But at the same time, then there was, for the one opportunity there was back then, there's like 100 now. So all these things kind of grow together.
I feel like this industry's really evolved. When we first started, you needed to work for a team or you needed to work for a broadcaster, like you mentioned. Now, I feel like there's so much need for content. There's so many different ways that you can get in to a venue, to a sporting event, to be able to share your clips and to share your, to create videos, where I feel like that's really, really opened up. And I feel like that's a real positive, that more and more people want to get into this. More and more people feel that video is valued. Teams need to post video, players need video, marketing needs video, and all that. So I just feel like this industry is getting bigger and bigger. And I know there's AI. I know the workflows will change, but I feel like right now, the amount people consume so much content that teams and sports industries just want more and more content. So I feel for a sports videographer right now, it's a good time to continue your career or even start that path if it's something that you're interested in, because everyone has a little TV screen in their pocket, and they're constantly looking at video and they're constantly being entertained. And sports is meant for entertainment. And it's one of the best entertainments because we can't control the storyline. We can't control what's going to happen on the field, but we can control how we share that content. So it's up to us as sports videographers to do the best we can to share that content, even if there are 360 cameras that can replace us one day.
Look, I just call it as I see it.
That's it. Well, I guess that's it for our little trip down memory lane. I after seeing the Expos, I just wanted to talk about it a bit because seeing Vladdy Jr. when he was a little kid, and I remember being there and then watching the Expos documentary, and that I just wanted a light episode where I can kind of reminisce with my boy E about the Expos. And it's the one day that E's not wearing an Expos hat, by the way. I don't know. He always has an Expo hat around. He hasn't worn it in a while. Since he got his haircut, he hasn't worn it. But yeah, we just want to, a little trip down memory lane, talk a little bit about baseball, talk about how the industry's kind of changed, talk about where we were and where we are now. And I hope, on your journey as a videographer, you see how things evolve and you use those to your advantage and learn and grow from them like we did.
It's a great conclusion.
All right, guys, take care. See you on the next episode.